So we're going to be doing a little thing here. I'm going to be talking about my new Connie drawing. So typically I don't post this Connie stuff onto the YouTube channel just because, I don't know, it's kind of not really all that important. But I think this is a really good piece of artwork. And I think to anyone that does draw or, you know, wants to draw for MultiVersus stuff, a lot of the stuff I do in this drawing here are going to be really helpful in terms of understanding the art style. I think this is the third different variation of a MultiVersus art style I've gone for, with Connie specifically. So yeah. So I guess if you're just here to see the drawing, you can just mute me. But yeah, so essentially the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to obviously get an outline, which you've already just seen. It's already over. Just the general shape. I went with her white shirt variant. I think that's the best default for her. It gives her shoes. It gives her the jeans. It gives her some flexibility with her legs. If you give her any skirts or dresses or anything, it makes it kind of difficult to animate, I'm sure. Of course, you can have that later, but I think this makes a lot of sense as her default. And she's quite a bit taller than Steven, so it was just getting the pose right. And then now what you're seeing is I'm going through and doing the line art. Now the line art is not going to actually be used at all. As you can see with the brief glimpses you see of Steven, the MultiVersus art style does not use black outlines at all. Very rarely uses any outlines at all. So what this is actually doing is this is just to get the shape down. And I'm going to copy it as well here in a minute to make sure that it's correct. Now the hand here, I'll skip over the hand. I got to get the hand right. Now the hand is going to be covered up. The fingers are going to be covered up. But you got to get the shape of the hand right, or it's going to look wrong. Which is what I was doing there. But yeah, so this is essentially I'm just getting the shape right for the entirety of the drawing here. Because what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to fill all this in, and that's how I'm going to be coloring her. She's going to be basically just solid shapes colored in as one being. Now the shape of the sword is awkward, but I got it in the end. I got to make sure the collar's right. Got to make sure all this is right over here, because we're going to be using this in a minute. So Connie has a weird thing with her head. It's actually shaped around her hair. You actually don't need to worry about the shape of the front of her head as much. It's more about the hair shape that interacts with it. And that's sort of just a thing with Steven Universe in general. You just want to, if you're drawing a Steven Universe character, it's usually the hair you want to draw first, because the head shape kind of is just inside of that hair conglomerate. So yeah, so this is me copying it and then filling it in, making sure I have all of the nooks and crannies filled in, just so I can see what's going on. Just going in. Yeah, you can see the quick glimpses of Steven. You can see there, it doesn't have an outline. The little bits of an outline he has are not actually outlines. They're more of a shadow cover, which you'll see me using that. But this is just me coloring her in. You can see I'm using there's a preset on Krita where you can draw and it stays in the lines of the thing you've already drawn, so it's pretty helpful. You'll see here in a second I'm going to turn off the outline, because I'm using the outline to determine where the colors are going to go, but I also need to make sure that I don't leave any of that pink anywhere, because it's going to not work through. Coloring in the pants here, or the shorts I should say, making sure that all works out. It's bleeding into the legs a little bit, but I haven't gotten the legs yet, so it doesn't really matter. Doing the neck, it's all pretty simple at this point. This is just me getting all of the base colors in there, because once all the base colors are on, it makes it really easy to do the next step. It looks kind of like a Smash Brothers stock icon, actually, if you really look at it like that. I think it looks pretty nice so far. Now the shading is where it's going to get pretty interesting. We'll get to that in just a second. But her shoe color is actually very similar. You can see it there. It's very similar to the pink I used. That was not intentional. It just kind of happened. Pretty cool though. The sword is cool. I did end up not doing the design on the sword. There's like a insignia, like a rose thing going on with it. I opted to not use that at all. The little white, I don't know if you can see it with the little reflexes of it, but the sword has a white sort of rose vine thing going around it, and I opted not to use that. I'm sure they would if they were to actually do this character in the game, but I opted not to use it. I just made it a little simpler, and the shading is going to be easier. I could always go back and add it. It's not a big deal. Now this is me figuring out how I'm going to do the shadows. See, Steven is actually interesting because the shadow is not made the same way as the highlight. So I ended up doing the same thing with Connie. The shadow is a totally different color, where the highlights are actually just white. So I ended up doing that. And then they do have hard shadows. The MultiVersus characters do have hard shadows as well, and hard lights. I didn't end up adding the hard lights. I should totally go back and do that, but I ended up not adding the hard lights as much as I probably should have. They usually have white, very specifically white lines right at the tips of their hair or the tips of their face or whatever. I should have ended up going with that, but it, it is what it is. So yeah, so the highlights are pure white at a 55% opacity, at least for Steven, that's how it was. So I went ahead and did that with her as well. And each one of these is a different layer. So the highlights are one layer, and then all the shadow layers are separate. That way they don't mix together, and I can erase them, and it doesn't bleed over into any of the other colors. As you can see, I'm doing here, I'm erasing it off of the clothing because it actually needs a different color for the shadow, or it's going to look really weird. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing here. Just making sure. So far, so good. It could always look better. Getting rid of it off the eyes. The eyes don't need it. Making sure the nose is defined because there's no hard outlines for the nose like there is on the normal Steven Universe ArtStyle. So I ended up having to make sure that you can see it with the shadows and the highlights. Doing the shoes, going to the pants. Pants I went with a blue. I don't know if I like the blue. I can always change it really easily because of the way that I did the shadows. But I think the blue works really well, honestly. And then we went with the same blue, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for the hair. We're not doing the hair yet, we're doing the sword. So the sword's interesting because it's the way that it looks in the show. You can see it right there, actually. There's a hard line where the edge of the sword is. And I ended up wanting to show that with the soft shadows because, MultiVersus has soft shadows. So, at least in the art style. So I think it looks really cool. I think it looks very unique anyway. So yeah, so I ended up going with, I think, a very similar blue for the hair. So it's just going around and making sure it's not on the face or anything. Or on anything else. I ended up using the exact same blue. I don't even think I erased it for the, I think I ended up thinking about erasing it, but I didn't actually do it for the shirt there. I think I just cleaned it up a little bit. Added it to the bottom there, making sure it's not on the arms, because it would look really weird. Cleaning it up some, as all I was doing there, making sure the shoelaces and socks and stuff have that. I actually am pretty sure that I didn't clean it up on the other side as good. I think I left it on the leg some, so I might need to go back and change that. But yeah, I did leave it. The pupils are really easy. Eyes are just in general really easy. I don't think this is a MultiVersus thing. I think this is specifically the Steven Universe characters only. They all have this outline thing going around their eyes. I think it's kind of cool, but it's definitely interesting way of doing it. And around their mouths as well. That I lower the opacity of those things because it's a little too overbearing, I think. Same with down here. They all have outlines around their clothing. I think this is a Steven Universe only thing. I don't know for sure, but yeah. So the buttons and everything got outlined those as well. I think it looks nice like that. And then you just do it on the sword as well. And then you just lower the opacity, and I think it ends up looking really good, honestly, when you do that. So yeah, that's Connie here with Steven. You know, I put one on the stage for you know. And then here is the card. You know, you can read it if you want, but I'm going to read it for you. So it says, Jam Partner. She creates buffs for your friends and debuffs for your enemies with a song. There's a best friend's mom's sword. Pretty funny, I think. Then it rhymes. Promptly poof all opponents, or perhaps not that preposterous. They all use P's. I think that's funny. And then roar, and it just says roar. Lion says hi. So yeah, so that's Connie. I don't know if I'll do a lot of these card super hyper MultiVersus style images much, but I just felt like doing it one day. I was bored, so yeah. So that's the video. Peace.